Hi all again. So once the tree has been cut down, it's got 50% moisture in it at that stage. It's mainly made up of water. So we cut it into the planks, which we covered in the last slideshow, which was timber conversion. And now we're dealing when the planks come to the drying out stage. This stage is called timber seasoning. Okay. So when timber is first felled, it is known as green timber and has a very high moisture content, in and around 50%. Before it can be used, it must be dried. If this process is not controlled properly, defects can occur that can ruin good timber. Defects, which we're going to talk about later on in the slideshow, like cupping, warping, twisting, which makes machining and making furniture with it later next or near impossible. Aim of seasoning is to dry out the wood to a suitable moisture content of 20% or less. Okay, so once we get it down to 20%, that basically would be the average moisture content inside in a building would be 20% or less. It will go above 20% and we're susceptible to rot, which we'll deal with in a later PowerPoint. So reasons for seasoning. Seasoning is the controlled process of reducing the moisture content of the timber so that it is suitable for the environment and intended use. I always use the example that if you have a plank and it's green, in other words that it's got 50% moisture in it, and you make a chair with it, and then you bring that chair in and put it beside the fire, leave it there for a week, it'll dry out and the chair will actually fall apart. Okay, so when we bring it into an environment such as a sitting room, and I suppose in its intended use, which is for sitting in or coffee table or whatever it is, that is where I suppose it'll find its own level with the humidity of the environment that it's in, like a room in a house. So wood will dry out naturally. So on to the next point. Wood will dry out naturally. So seasoning helps us to control the process and keep the timber more stable and more useful. Okay, prevents splitting at the ends of the timber, prevents a lot of fungal and insect attack. So when the moisture content is high, insects love to eat on that type of wood. Typical in a roof where the slates and the felt are leaking and the water is getting at the timber, moisture content in the wood rises and then it starts to rot. So the next point, it is less likely to distort or warp later if it's seasoned correctly. After seasoning, timber is easy to work with because it is lighter, harder and stronger. Okay, so there is no disadvantage to seasoning a piece of wood properly. So the typical moisture contents, I suppose, of air seasoned wood, which we'll deal with later, is about 20 to 22%. The limit for the occurrence of dry rot is about 20%. Outdoor furniture, you'd want about 16% moisture content in it. Occasionally heated areas, you're talking about your kitchens and your bathroom areas and your sitting rooms, 12 to 14% you'd want in the furniture in there. Heated areas. Now heated areas, I suppose, again will be your shower rooms, your heated areas, I suppose, like your utility rooms. They'd want even a lower moisture content in the wood. Radiator covers, I suppose, would be another area. And then very heated areas, you're into your saunas and your steam rooms. Okay, you want really, really, really dry timber in those areas. So the influence of relative humidity, and I always like to kind of use the analogy, I suppose, of a pipe filled with water. Okay, and that pipe will, I suppose, if you pour water into that pipe, it'll always find a common level inside in the tube of liquid. Okay, so it'll always find a common level. You'll never find that water going to a different level. It'll always even itself out. Okay, so water finding a common level is very similar to what we're about to talk about with relative humidity and the influence of that. So if we have a piece of timber that's 20% moisture in it, and we put it outside in a rainy day, it will raise the moisture content of that wood to match the moisture content of the outside area. So relative humidity, the amount of moisture or water vapor in the air at the given temperature compared to the maximum amount of moisture the air could hold at the same temperature. Wood will continue to shrink or grow to reach equilibrium, like what I just drew in the diagram underneath here. Equilibrium means equal, so it'll find it's equal. This means that it acclimatizes to its surrounding environment. For example, if a piece of timber with a moisture content of 12% is placed in a room with a moisture content of 20%, then the timber will rise slowly until it reaches that 20% level. So the types of seasoning that we'll be, I suppose, encountering are natural air seasoning. I'll give you one example of natural air seasoning. I had a cousin who had a very expensive oak tree fell in their garden. They converted it into planks, put it into their attic, and stored the planks on the collars in the attic. And there is a good natural airflow through the fascia and soffit of a roof that would allow those oak planks to dry out over time. Now, we left them there for a good few years, but that is an example of natural air seasoning. Kiln seasoning, I suppose, is then done on an industrial level, and we'll talk about that as well. So air seasoning. With this process, the timber is roughly sawed to size and stacked using spacers called stickers. With the timber stacked in the open air, vertical spacing achieved by using timber battens of the same species. The piling sticks should be spaced close enough to prevent bowing. This allows the free movement of air. The stack should be protected from direct influence of the elements at the ends of the planks and should be maybe painted or have a rag put over them to stop them drying out too much. The advantages of air seasoning. Now, this could be done in an open shed in somebody's backyard, where you just stack the timber one plank on top of the other. Make sure it's well supported so that the planks don't sag from left to right. And it's a very, very cheap method of seasoning, and we've got an image of that coming up in a moment. So it's not expensive. Small labor cost once the stack is made. It is environmentally friendly as it uses very little energy or no energy. The disadvantages are that it's a very slow drying rate. You're talking months, if not years, to get it to 18 to 20% moisture, which isn't really dry enough for some conditions in an internal house. Large areas of space required in a large shed. Only dries the timber to approximately 20%, so leaving it open to some insect and fungal attack while it is only suitable for outdoor joinery. So this would be an example of the stack on the left, and this is a photograph on the right of how that may be carried out in real life time. Very important to have the roof like so, and that the ends of the pieces of timber would be located here, that they would be painted with maybe a blue paint or a black paint or whatever kind of a paint, just to stop the wind and stuff like that and the rain when they start to batter there, or the sunlight, even the sun's rays coming in there, drying out the timber unevenly. You could also put a cloth over the end of it, and that would do the same thing. I suppose kiln seasoning, which is another name for this, is called compartment seasoning. It relies on a controlled environment or a room to dry out the timber and requires the following factors: forced air circulation by using large fans and blowers, heat of some form provided by pipe steam, humidity control provided by steam jets. The amount and duration of air, heat and humidity again depends on the size, species, quantity. In general, the atmosphere in the kiln at first will be cool and moist. The temperature is gradually increased and the humidity reduced until the required moisture content is achieved. This is a picture of a compartment kiln or kiln seasoning. So the kiln is a single enclosed container or building. The timber is stacked in the same manner as the natural air seasoning that's carried out outside. Whole stack is seasoned using a program of settings. I suppose it's computerized, if you like, until the whole stack is reduced to the moisture content required. You've got a greater control over the moisture content you want the timber to be. All you have to do is key in the required moisture content, and this compartment kiln will take it down to whatever you want. So the advantages are that it's quicker due to higher temperatures, ventilation and air circulation. It achieves a lower moisture content, which will be good when using expensive pieces of timber. Defects associated with drying can be controlled. Allows more precise rates of drying for various timber species and thickness of boards. The disadvantages is that it's expensive. It requires supervision by a skilled operator and uses lots of energy, so it's not as environmentally friendly as the natural air seasoning that can be carried out in anybody's shed. It is very, very quick, and that's a major advantage. If you cut down a tree on a Monday, you season the timber, and in maybe a week or two's time, you can have a plank of timber that's ready to make something, unlike the natural seasoning. So it's very, very quick, very accurate, and quick turnaround for of the material. So finding the moisture content, I'll leave you read through that there on your own, and you can pause it and read it. That there is a moisture meter. That picture that you're looking at, it's got two little probes that stick into the wood. If you're making anything for the inside of your house, very important to use a moisture meter. If you're making something like a radiator cover, you don't want the timber and that smiling at you after 6 months. So you need really, really dry timber, so a moisture meter should be used. It's a little mathematics on finding the moisture content of a piece of timber. Seasoning and shrinkage. Okay, so I want you to do those two questions for me for homework. Write them on a piece of paper and submit on Microsoft Teams. You'll do this question for me. Loads of neat freehand sketches and lots of notes, please. Don't skimp on it. You should take about 1 A4 page. And the second assignment will be this one. This will be separate and will be later on for a later stage, which I will specify in the assignment section. Again, lots of notes, lots of sketches for me on a piece of paper. All the information is in this PowerPoint. Please use it. Any questions, feel free to ask. Thanks very much.